former President Donald Trump delivered a laundry list of his familiar election lies and other false claims, plus some new falsehoods on subjects ranging from abortion laws to his policy on dealing with drug cartels, in an interview that aired Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press. The show's new moderator, Kristen Welker, promptly corrected some of the false claims, others were aired unchallenged. Here's a fact check of an assortment of Trump's remarks. Infanticide. Trump, attacking Democrats on abortion policy, claimed, "You have some states that are allowed to kill the child after birth." He also said specifically, "You have New York State and other places that passed legislation where you're allowed to kill the baby after birth." Facts first, this is false. Killing a child after birth is not allowed in any state, and New York did not pass legislation permitting infanticide. A law New York approved in 2019 makes abortion illegal after 24 weeks with the exception of cases where the fetus is not viable or the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. The law does not legalize post-birth murder. Since its passage, however, it has been the subject of online misinformation falsely claiming it does. There are some cases in which parents decide to choose palliative care for babies who are born with deadly conditions that give them just minutes, hours, or days to live. That is simply not the same as killing the baby. Trump's comments about drug cartels. Welker said to Trump, "If elected, you say you would order the Defense Department to use special forces to inflict maximum damage on drug cartels." But Trump responded, "I didn't say that. No. People said I said that." He repeated, "I didn't say that." Facts first, Trump said that. In a video he released in January, which remains on his website, he said that, "If elected president again, I will order the Department of Defense to make appropriate use of special forces, cyber warfare, and other overt and covert actions to inflict maximum damage on cartel leadership, infrastructure and operations." The media and the war in Ukraine. Trump claimed, "I will say this, something's going on, and it's not good for Ukraine. Because the news is no longer reporting about the war. The fake news. They don't report about the war anymore. You don't find much reporting. That means that Ukraine's losing. Okay? I see very little reporting from NBC, your network. I see very little reporting from NBC, ABC, from CBS, from anyone about the war." Facts first, it's not true that news outlets don't report about the war anymore, though the amount of television coverage on broadcast news networks has certainly declined from the first months after Russia's invasion in 2022. CNN continues to do extensive daily reporting on the war on television and online. NBC News wrote in its own fact check of this Trump claim, that is demonstrably false. In the last 2 weeks alone, NBC News has published dozens of stories and broadcasts on all platforms about the Ukraine war. The fact check cited specific examples, then continued, CBS News and ABC News have had dozens of articles and videos on their websites, too. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Trump criticized President Joe Biden for releasing a large quantity of crude oil from the National Strategic Petroleum Reserve to try to keep prices down in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Trump claimed that this is a reserve I had a lot to do with filling up for the first time ever. Trump added later in the interview, he wanted to have low gas prices for an election. And now, we have nothing left. That the amount of oil in the reserve fell during the Trump presidency is not all because of him. The law requires some mandatory sales from the reserve for budget reasons, and when Trump issued a 2020 directive to buy tens of millions more barrels and fill the reserve to its maximum capacity, Democrats in Congress blocked the required funding. Nonetheless, he didn't fill up the reserve as he claims. We didn't publish a fact check when he claimed at a campaign rally on September 8 that it was $34 trillion, but this is now an exaggeration of an exaggeration, and $2 trillion is certainly a significant difference. The price of bacon. While discussing inflation, Trump said, "Things are not going, right now, very well for the consumer. Bacon is up 5 times. The average price of bacon is higher than it was when he left office, but it is nowhere near up 5 times. The average price of sliced bacon was $6.502 per pound in August 2023, compared with $5.831 in January 2021, according to federal data, an increase of about 11.5%, not even close to the 400% increase Trump keeps claiming. Military equipment left to the Taliban. Criticizing the way Biden handled the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, Trump repeated a claim about how much military equipment was left to the Taliban when the Afghan government and armed forces collapsed. "We gave $85 billion worth of equipment to the Taliban," Trump said. As other fact-checkers have previously explained, the $85 billion is a rounded-up figure. It's closer to $83 billion, for the total amount of money Congress appropriated during the war to a fund supporting the Afghan security forces. A minority of this funding was for equipment. Trump and the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Trump said of Russian President Vladimir Putin, "Look, I had a very good relationship with him. And yet nobody was tougher on Russia than me. I stopped Nord Stream 2. You never heard of Nord Stream 2, that was the pipeline, until I got involved. I said, Nord Stream 2. People that were sophisticated, military people, and political people never heard of Nord Stream 2. I had it ended. The pipeline was dead." Second, while we don't know what any particular military people and political people might have said to Trump, it's not true that, in general, you never heard of Nord Stream 2 before he began discussing it as president. Nord Stream 2 was a regular subject of media, government and diplomatic discussion before Trump took office. In fact, Biden publicly criticized it as vice president in 2016. Trump may well have generated increased U.S. awareness of the project, but he certainly wasn't the one to bring it to the federal government's attention. The pipeline never began operations. Germany ended up halting the project as Russia was about to invade Ukraine early last year. The pipeline was damaged later in the year in what has been described as an act of sabotage. Trump blames Pelosi for January 6th. Trump repeatedly attempted to blame Democratic California Representative Nancy Pelosi, who was Speaker of the House on January 6, 2021, for the riot that day at the U.S. Capitol, claiming she rejected his offer, days prior, of 10,000 National Guard troops. Trump said, "Listen, Nancy Pelosi was in charge of security. She turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't turn down the soldiers, you wouldn't have had January 6th. He said explicitly, she's responsible for January 6th. First, the Speaker of the House is not in charge of Capitol security. Capitol security is overseen by the Capitol Police Board, a body that includes the sergeants at arms of the House and the Senate. The Senate was led at the time by a Republican, Senator Mitch McConnell is not at fault either, but Trump has not blamed him while casting blame on Pelosi. Second, there is no evidence for the claim that Pelosi rejected a Trump offer of 10,000 National Guard troops in advance of January 6th. Her office has explicitly said she was not even presented with such an offer, telling CNN last year claims to the contrary are lies. Pelosi said on MSNBC on Sunday, "The former occupant of the White House has always been about projection. He knows he's responsible for the riot, so he projects it onto others." Third, even if Pelosi had been told of an offer of National Guard troops, she would not have had the power to turn it down. The Speaker of the House has no authority to prevent the deployment of the District of Columbia National Guard, which reports to the President, whose authority is delegated, under a decades-old executive order, to the Secretary of the Army. Fourth, it's worth noting the House Select Committee that investigated the attack on the Capitol found no evidence Trump gave any actual order for 10,000 Guard troops, and the Biden-era Pentagon told the Washington Post in 2021 it has no record of any such order. Miller testified to the House Select Committee that investigated the attack on the Capitol that Trump had, in a January 5 phone call, briefly and informally floated the idea of having 10,000 troops present on January 6 but did not issue any directive to that effect. Miller said, "I interpreted it as a bit of presidential banter or President Trump banter that you all are familiar with, and in no way, shape, or form did I interpret that as an order or direction." Fifth, at around 3:49 p.m. during the riot, Pelosi was filmed while on the phone with Miller urging him to hurry guard troops to the Capitol, telling him just get them there and to just pretend for a moment this was the Pentagon or the White House or some other entity that was under siege. Trump made no such plea. The House Select Committee that investigated the attack on the Capitol found that Trump did not call any high-level defense official during the riot, that Trump never ordered a guard deployment, Miller did so, and that Trump never instructed any law enforcement agency to assist. Pelosi said on MSNBC on Sunday, "Chuck Schumer and I begged him to send the troops, again and again." She added, "These Trumpites were attacking the Capitol, fighting the police, threatening my life and the life of the vice president. We're turning down the troops?" Trump's indictments. Trump referred to the two federal indictments against him as Biden indictments, claiming Biden directed the Justice Department to charge the former president in the cases brought by special counsel Jack Smith in Washington, D.C. The 2020 election. Trump repeatedly argued that the 2020 election was rigged against him, and he claimed that there's no questions about it.